Now, this is going to be very boring one. Nobody's going to watch it. I think it's really important though. So, NiChuilleanain, as you know, is one of the poets, the two poets who fits into both categories, Irish and female this year. Really like NiChuilleanain. And here are two questions that were asked on her in the Leaving Cert in past exams. In 2024, the question asked gave this statement: NiChuilleanain uses evocative imagery to produce poems that often reveal meaningful insights about the nature of life. And of course, the instruction to discuss that statement. And 2018, the question asked about how she uses or tells fascinating stories, often examining themes that are relevant to contemporary Ireland in a style that is both beautiful and mysterious. And so, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just play around with writing a response paragraph to each one of those questions using the same poem. And the poem I'm going to choose is the poem Street. Now, I'm sure those of you who are studying NiChuilleanain are familiar with the extraordinary Street because it really is an extraordinary poem. I love it. And the reason that I said I'd write about it is because it just, what I, first of all, it's one of those poems that appears very simple, but it has a depth and complexity to it. But also, it's a poem that a lot of you might be studying if you're doing NiChuilleanain, and it's an easy one to use to answer these two questions. Now, when I think about, I'll just bring it up on the screen here really quickly. So when I think about NiChuilleanain, and I think about that poem, I'm always thinking about that first line. He fell in love with the butcher's daughter. Love that first line. I'm always thinking about that image of him staring at the dark, shining drops on the paving stones, the drops that come, drops of blood that come from her knife. And the idea that he follows her down a slanting lane at the back of the shambles, and that she goes in this door which stands half open. Now, those are the kind of lines and images that I'm going to use to write this paragraph. So when I go and I start thinking about this, I'm always thinking about, okay, how do I study for English? Well, I need to know my material. So hopefully you've watched a video and I've explained this, or you've attended class and I've explained it. And hopefully you understand that you know, or you understand and you know that your knowledge of the poems is only the base material of the work that you're going to try to do, and that your knowledge of the poems is going to be the provide you with the evidence that you're going to use to make strong points in response to whatever the particular wording of the question is. And if the question is nice, then you're okay. Now, in the case of this particular, where is it? There it is. There. This particular poet, these 2 years, the questions were lovely. So I'm going to start with the first question from 2024. She uses evocative imagery, and I can't just say the imagery is evocative. I have to explain what it evokes. And then I have to talk about meaningful insights into the nature of life. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an A-B paragraph structure. Sorry. And I'm not saying this is the way you have to do it. I'm just showing you it's our way of doing it. And what that means is I'm going to demonstrate my knowledge of the poem in the first part of my analysis of this poem. And I'm going to then kind of analyze that knowledge in the light of the question, the second part, to do my critical thinking. And this is what you have to be able to do. So big mistake in, I hate talking about the exam all the time, but that's what you care about. That's the world you live in. This stuff is valuable outside of the exam, controversial statements from Paul. But you have to be able to, or get it into your head that I don't need you to tell me the story of the poem, but I do need you to show me you know the poem well enough to comment on it. So I need you to have that balance. Yes, I need information, but I don't need loads of information. What I need is information, and I need question facing commentary critical thinking, contextualization, whatever the phrase is your teacher uses. So, okay, here we go. Just as an example, I'm going to type now. It's really boring. You can, no, nobody will watch. As I said, nobody will watch this video. Watch the analytics on this video, and it'll have cut off after 30 seconds. So here we go. I'm always thinking about the question when I get going, and I'm going to imagine that this is like the second or the third poem I'm discussing in my essay. Now, see how boring I am? So I look at that, like that's a pretty damn good paragraph. Now, as those of you who have been on the live call with me will know I can't figure out how to do the word count on this using Word on the iPad. I'll figure it out. But if I just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you've got somewhere around 100 words there, maybe a little bit over 100 words there in that little paragraph. Now you read that paragraph, and doesn't it show that the candidate knows the poem well? Let's just read it back really quickly. Street is another poem that demonstrates the poet's power over language. I like the word another because it's a link word to what you've already written, showing that you're aware of coherence of delivery as an aspect of the marking scheme. It begins with the brilliant line, and here's your first quote: "He fell in love with the butcher's daughter." It's accurate, but it's not overly long. And what follows is a very strange narrative in which an unknown protagonist's fascination, even obsession, with this young woman is shown. Again, nice sentence structure, nice clarity of phrasing. You're using language that demonstrates you've studied Bishop, Bishop NiChuilleanain, you know that she's a narrative poet. You know that there's often mystery in her work. He follows her as dark shining drops of blood drip from her knife, and reread your work and check for errors. She goes down a slanting lane behind the shambles. Shambles is I'll explain it in the next paragraph, but it's an abattoir slaughterhouse before going into a half open door. So you've demonstrated real good knowledge of the poem there. There is no question the scene is evocative. You're bringing it back to the question. That word is in the question. NiChuilleanain's narrative style immerses the reader into the world of the poem in an immediate and evocative style. And let's just say there, okay, I've already used evocative. I don't need to use it again, so I'm going to get rid of it. And I'm going to change that to memorable. There are, as you know, a list of words that I've used that mean that the scene is good, that the language is effective, and we try to utilize them as we write. So that's a decent paragraph in that it shows knowledge and it is engaged with the question. And when you look at the question, you know, it's talked about imagery, it's talked about the narrative scene, it's talked about the scenario that's been set up, and it does show that her work is evocative. It says it now. We're going to analyze what makes it evocative in a second, but then it doesn't at all deal with meaningful insights about the nature of life. So in other words, if that was all the student wrote, the quality is not good. I mean, in terms of expression, the quality is good. In terms of punctuation, spelling, mechanics, in terms of knowledge of the poem, all that is good. But you're not really answering the question. And what you need to do now is do a really analytical follow-up part B paragraph in which you contextualize the information given in part A in the light of the question. I like the structured A-B structure. I don't know whether other teachers will or not, but I think as long as you give me that analysis, as long as you give the examiner the question-facing analysis, you're going to do well. So what is evocative here, and what are the insights? Remember, I keep on coming back to the word. What are the insights which are meaningful about the nature of life? And then bring it back to the question at the end. The question is asking about meaningful insights in the nature of life. Now, so if you look at that there, I'm not saying it's perfect, and nothing you write is perfect. Nothing you write will ever be perfect. But if you want to practice, well, you have to, if you want to do well at English, you have to practice trying to use the material that you understand and bringing it to the question. Making sure that you're trying to show engagement with the question. And an examiner will love you for that as long as you try. Now, what you've got there is, let's have a look and see, right? We've got a big, now so that's 745. There's loads of writing in this, but you've probably got 300 or 400 words of writing there on one poem. And just listen back to it and tell me, does it feel like you're talking about evocative imagery and meaningful insights into the nature of life? Street is another poem that demonstrates the poet's power over language. It begins with the brilliant line, he fell in love with the butcher's daughter. And what follows is a very strange narrative in which the unknown or an unknown protagonist's fascination, even obsession with this young woman is shown. He follows her as dark shining drops of blood drip from her knife and she goes down a slanting lane behind the shambles before going into a half open door. There is no question that the scene is evocative. NiChuilleanain's, and I didn't use the diacritical marks to fathers there, apologies, I don't know how to do it on the this particular word version of Word I have here. They should be in there. Immerses the reader into the world of the poem in an immediate and memorable style. The simplicity of the scene is intriguing. Okay, so you're really engaging with the question now. But the fact that the poet employs symbolism is that, sorry, it is the fact that the poet employs symbolism that really makes the poem appealing. So there you are. This has all got to do with why the language or the style is evocative. It's intriguing, it's appealing. Those drops of blood are reminiscent of the breadcrumbs in the Hansel and Gretel fairy tale. Don't forget, NiChuilleanain makes fairy tale allusions all the time. And the fact that the lane is slanting, maybe I should have put slanting in inverted commas there. I probably should have. I'll just put it in italics for the moment. Adds an air of mystery. And that is what the poem is about. It is about the mystery of romantic love. Now, is there anything more relevant to the nature of life than romantic love? A woman carrying a knife which drips with blood is hardly a traditional romantic heroine. Despite this, the male figure is drawn to her. The sense is that there is no real logic to love. This is the meaningful insight, that it is beyond rational thought. That's a meaningful insight. We do not fall in love with who we might expect to love because relationships and attraction, now it should be, are so mysterious. That's the meaningful insight into life that NiChuilleanain explores in this fascinating, mysterious poem. Now again, I'm opening myself by putting this stuff out there on the internet. I'm opening myself to getting slaughtered by teachers, and that's fine. I don't mind. But for me, when I look at work like that, if a student hands me work like that, it is purposeful. They are on the question and they're working really hard to try and make all the evidence they give relevant to the question. It is purposeful. It is coherent. They haven't written one giant paragraph. They've dealt with that poem across 2 paragraphs and they've integrated quotation. It's not quotation heavy. There's 1 line and then 3 symbols, 3 short 1 or 2 line, 1 or 2 word quotes. So, but it's still clear that they know their poem really well. So you have coherence in terms of organization, sorry. The language is clear and controlled. It's been reread. The little errors that were there have been remedied and it's mechanically accurate. So it's doing really well. And for me, from my point of view, is it relevant to the question? Yes. Is it informed by learning? Yes. Is the writing clear and easy to read? Yes. Have I tried to contextualize the point in the light of the question? Yes. It conforms to the RIC rules. Relevant, informed, clear, and contextualized points. I don't think that's a bad example of how to go about writing poetry essays, regardless of who you're writing on.